Well, I think what's happening really is that the socially concerned poetry is what people are talking about mostly. It's not everything that I write. I started out by getting up on stage and doing poetry, and so right away I was kind of stamped, oh, she's a performance poet. And then you take the stage and they go, oh, she's an African American performance poet. And it makes people think that they know what you're about to do or what most of your poetry is going to be like. And I fight against that a lot. I turn toward whatever I've witnessed that I think I want to make other people be witness to. And often, because there are things that sadden me or make me angry, it's often something with a political bent, but I wouldn't label myself a political poet. I feel like I'm delivering another version of the news. I look at what's happening, I lift it up, I look underneath it, I go behind it, I look to see what's behind it. I try on all the shoes in a story, and when I find a pair of shoes that are really uncomfortable, I say, maybe this should be where I start writing from. I remember one time I was in Berlin, and they had had a train that traveled across the German countryside with poets. And they would get out at these small towns and music would be playing and they'd paint the kids' faces and everybody would, and the poets would do their thing, get on the train, go to the next town. And I was in Berlin when the train came back for the final time. And there were so many people there to greet the poets. They had to shut the station down. People were carrying placards with their pictures and flags, and they opened the doors, and the poets couldn't get out of the train, so they passed them over their heads. And I'd never seen anything like that. And I said, this is what it's like when people go to a certain place for the news, and then they look at the poets to get the real news. I had done a book previously about Hurricane Katrina. And the reason it became a book and not a single poem, is what I thought it was going to be, is because I saw that people were tired of it. They didn't want to hear about it anymore. They didn't want to see any more pictures of people being, piling into baskets and being, carried down from their roofs. They didn't want to hear any more anguish. And I think a lot of these things need to stay in front of our faces for much longer so that we can have a real conversation about them and not be looking past them to say, oh, and what else is happening? I can see that same thing in my own book because there's a whole segment of the book that deals with people who are losing their lives at the hands of the police and the people who love them. And so I think I need to keep that out in the forefront somehow so people don't stop talking about it or don't stop being aware of the fact that it's like a drumbeat behind all these other things. It just keeps happening. With my writers, I want them to see the beauty in terrible things and the terrible part of beauty. When I'm talking to people about being poets, I said, get ready. You're going to look behind you in that pavement where you think that you've stored everything. It's going to be cracking, because now you have the tools you need to readdress those things. That's why I'm often going back into things that I have a series of Emmett Till poems in the book. That was something that was such a big part of my childhood and something I really wanted to forget. But then once I have the tools to re-examine those stories, the stories come back and say, now what? Now how do you feel about this? Now how are you going to address it? Most of my poems begin with a line, and the line might live for a long time before it attaches itself to the rest of a poem. I don't sit down from 2 to 5 every day and say, oh, time to write poetry, because a lot of times nothing is there. But the line lives with me, and then one day at about 3 in the morning, when I'm in bed, another line attaches itself to it, and another line, and I have to get up and write. In the interim, when the faucet's not on, one of the things I tell my students, and they think I'm nuts, I tell other poets this, I write 10 pages a day. And the 10 pages don't have to be poetry. They don't have to be finished poems or anything like that. 10 pages toward my art. So if I am writing about firemen, and I want to know what it's like for a fireman to run into a fire, I look at an interview with a fireman, or I look at someone, and I take notes, and those notes become part of the 10 pages. Because you can't go to your 9-to-5 job and say, it's really not, I'm not really feeling this today, so I'm just going to take this day off. One of the most revelatory moments for me is when I said, this is not a recreational exercise. This is my job. So I have to check in for it somehow every day. And at the end of the day, I have to look back on something that I've done that got me closer to, what I feel my job is supposed to accomplish.